I've been in this business since 2003, and a lot of you will know me and know of Core in the audience. I was also, though, kind of prompted by a very large graphic in the reception here at Caesar's Palace this morning. It said, "Reimagining Vegas for the last 50 years." And if you think about it, that's exactly where we are today. We're working through a change in a business which started with traditional, I'm almost going to call it working, blue-collar type of M2M, and moving into this world of IoT. A lot of the values, a lot of the techniques, a lot of the learnings come from the past, just as they came from gambling and great stakes, here in Vegas. But they're changing. They're changing in the way that the companies are engaging with vendors, with the business models. The last panel talked about ROI models and others. And successful organizations inside of this space have to change too. Now, I will say, the idea of what to do with $10 billion is a little bit daunting. Arguably, running for president may be a good one. The alternative is possibly investing in gold futures. But we're actually asked to look at it in the context of IoT. A business that is going to, over time, add billions of devices to networks, some of them clustered around automobiles. There's 100 network devices in the average car today. Some of them over wide areas, over satellite and cellular-related services. And that's where we've focused a lot of our attention. So very quickly, I'll tell you a little bit about what we have been doing over the years to change the momentum inside this marketplace and where I think the market is going. First of all, for those that don't know about Core, we've been involved in the so-called machine-to-machine market since 2003, and we're very much advocates of investing into the industry, both from a knowledge base and from a technology base, right back from when we started. Very early on, we participated with the type certification boards on the development of the embedded SIM technologies and their specifications. Over time, we've actually expanded through a variety of acquisitions, the most recent of which being that of Wireless, a complementary organization that operated both here in the United States as well as in Europe and Brazil, which we closed on April the 11th. So we're just exactly 3 months into the most recent of our acquisitive activities. Acquisitions are an interesting challenge in our industry space. We've seen consolidation taking place in and around the fleet marketplaces, sometimes in medical and other related application areas. But the reality is, integrating businesses is challenging if you don't have a large vision of exactly why you're doing it. Scale for scale's sake doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but scale to be able to invest more heavily in new technologies, in leveraging the technologies that are in fact becoming available and speeding them to marketplace, and even more critically, being able to service customers on a global footprint have become part of our mantra. Enterprises increasingly are the customers for IoT solutions. It's no longer solely in the hands of the application provider communities. And multinational enterprises require multinational support and sales and technology organizations. So today, Core has got some 385 or thereabouts employees around the world. We're supporting over 3,000 customers. We have actually network services being supported according to our heat maps that the technology group showed me quite recently in more than 110 countries around the world, from Bhutan to Canada. And we're also supporting some 6.5 million devices on our networks around the world today, which excludes devices by carriers who are utilizing our platform services. Scale is important because it allows us to be able to invest in new technologies. Let's be completely honest. Some of these new technologies around, as you'll see later, data analytics and other related areas, cost a lot of money. If I'm doing it over 10 and 15 and 20 million devices, clearly it's more advantageous than doing it over 2 or 3. But much more importantly, we're embedded with a very large customer base, from young startup organizations to large-scale enterprises. And they feed us lots and lots of information about what their needs are going to be now and in 18 months and 24 months and 36 months' time. And one of the greatest challenges when you're building a new business or building a business in a new marketplace is, are you solving yesterday's problem, or are you moving forward and transforming to tomorrow's solutions? Our focus is the transformation. Transformation of using new technologies like eSIM technologies, data analytics services, service platforms, and others, which allow our customers to scale their own businesses. We've got customers today running 250,000 devices on our networks. They don't do that on an Excel spreadsheet and a couple of people in the back of an office. So what's been our approach? Well, clearly, if we look at what's happening in the marketplace today, there are many, many participants in all parts of this jigsaw puzzle. Frankly, global connectivity, or at least connectivity, is being served well, some cases very well, both by the carriers as well as by the independent providers. When you move from one market to a second market, to a fifth market, to a 10th market, this all becomes a great deal more complicated, however. Particularly if you look at the usage profiles that devices have got, the latency that the applications need, and frankly, how you troubleshoot a problem on a street light in Jakarta, Indonesia, compared to doing it on the back of a truck in Naples, Florida. We have very different kind of service techniques and tools to help us through that. You have to be able to provide scalable connectivity platforms. There's lots of apps platform developers and providers there, from the big names we all know, the ThingWorks, Exceeders, ILSs, and so on of this world, to perhaps 50, 60, 70, 80 more that are in niches within our marketplaces. The problem is that all of these components still require the customer, whether he is an application provider customer or an enterprise, to become their own integrator. And we don't see that that is a fast way of driving a business going forward. We have to find ways of being able to simplify this fragmented marketplace, both through our own technologies, sometimes glueware between our technology elements, as well as obviously through partnerships, so we can actually take solutions to marketplace ever more quickly. This is a significant focus of our broad-based attention. If you look at where our business started, we were basically a connectivity provider. Back in 2003, there were a variety of independent, call them MVNOs, that serviced this particular marketplace. And the reality was that they were doing the work that the carriers didn't like. They were buying capacity from the carriers, as were we. They were putting it together as packages for the predominantly application provider market, the guy that was building applications for the auto vehicle recovery marketplace, maybe medical, a little bit of payment processing, things of that nature. But essentially, it was dirty business. You know, the carriers didn't make a lot of money out of it. It was sort of sub $5 a month of revenues, typically. And people wanted things like, heaven forbid, you know, service, guarantees of continuity, technology advice, things of that nature. And that grew an MVNO-type marketplace. Things have matured enormously since that time. And today, connectivity is a starting point, but it's a layered model which we're delivering into the marketplace. We're providing both managed connectivity from an end-to-end basis, because ultimately, our business is managing customers' data and managing that data reliably and securely from the endpoint in which it's collected back to host services or systems, and ultimately into the future, peer-to-peer systems, which will allow smart devices around the edge, they were being talked about a little bit in the previous panel, to be able to communicate on a peer-to-peer basis, which is when we get to the real Internet of Things. Today, we don't have an Internet of Things. Tomorrow, we won't have an Internet of Things, because the Internet is about horizontal peer-to-peer communications. Today, it's a hub-and-spoke system, and that will change over time. In addition, though, to the connectivity and the managed services capabilities, we also are providing areas for application enablement, both through our own platforms, Position Logic, as well as through partnerships with other companies, some of which I've previously mentioned. We're providing business continuity services, what we call Business Connect. Very interesting marketplace, which is enabling the innovatory delivery of new services to retailers in many marketplaces, to large-scale enterprises that are taking advantage of the latency and throughput of today's higher bandwidth networks. And we're providing platform as a service capabilities. I'm missing the middle one because I'm going to come back onto it in just a moment, which is called workforce automation. Platform as a service is rather intriguing. Many of you know that the leader in the provision of, let me call it the on-ramp to M2M and subsequently the IoT environment is clearly Jasper. Jasper recently purchased for an astronomical sum of money, about 10% of the amount that I'm allowed to spend on the 10 billion or thereabouts here. But personally, love their valuation. But the key was that they had created, undoubtedly, the world's leading on-ramp onto this marketplace, where you bring thin market devices into the carrier world. The platform as a service, however, we see is slightly different. While that's a valid and accessible part of the market, and indeed our own platforms at Core are used by carriers just like Jasper's, both in Europe and in Asia today, we're also providing customized platform as a service capabilities to enterprises. Companies like Audi, where we work in conjunction with most of the carriers here in North America, Bosch in security systems, and others, are utilizing our platforms as an integrated component of their business solutions, and ultimately may in fact lead to the capability of giving those large-scale global enterprises the ability to become their own MVNOs in certain marketplaces. But it isn't just a platform, because we recognize that just like you don't become a wireless carrier by rushing down the road and going to Amdocs and building and buying a $1 billion, or in their case, $2 or $3 or $4 billion billing system, you don't become a carrier by buying a billing system. You don't become a success in IoT by buying a platform. You don't become a messaging broker by buying an SMSC or other pieces of technologies. You actually have to build a service around these capabilities. And if we build a service around it, this means support, call centers, and other related secure capabilities such that we can manage the customer's experience. That's what we mean when we build platform as a service. Yes, it's a piece of technology, but much more, it's the wrapper of the business services which we can manage efficiently and effectively for and on behalf of our customers under their own brand. Now, however, we start to see some other significant changes taking place in the marketplace before us. Where the marketplace originally started with application providers, and quite frankly, for the next 5 years, will still be driven by application providers. Individual organizations that have got a really cool understanding of a vertical segment, whether it's for a heart monitor application, a diabetes control service, a payment processing solution from Verifone in the back of a cab, or whether it's a fleet management application, the list goes on. One of the great luxuries that we've had in Core is by being a horizontally focused business, we learn a great deal about the business needs and models for our customers. And as a result, we're able to hone our solutions that are specific to the individual needs of those individual segments. Some need, frankly, cheap connectivity. Best efforts. You know, if I'm getting back a $5,000 truck that was sold on the Houston Ring Road to somebody doing gardening work, you know, do you really care if it takes you a couple of hours extra to recover it? Not really, as long as I kind of get it back. The same may not be said if I'm running a critical care heart monitoring application for a patient. It may just be a little bit more important that the devices are working, the latency is great, the continuity is guaranteed, there's people there to support you, and so on and so forth. So we've been able to learn a lot about what these new marketplaces are wanting to do. And the ASPs are the innovators. They're driving the growth in our business. Some of them are being acquired, particularly, I think, in the health management area, predominantly because there's a very complicated value chain that's related to that marketplace. And so you're seeing significant growth in the Glaxo and Pfizer and Elias and companies like this that are actually acquiring small-scale ASPs and helping them grow and develop into their marketplace. But, big but, the major change that's taking place in our market is that the enterprise itself is becoming a direct participant. And I say is becoming. It has been, but it hasn't knowledgeably been involved in the M2M and IoT space. The enterprise has always been the customer. You know, when Sears was putting fleet management systems into their trucks in 2003, 4, or 5, they were buying from an ASP, but it was in the fleet department of Sears. It wasn't at the CIO level. Today, and this is where I think that the whole lexicon of using the terminology, the Internet of Things, is very helpful, is that today's CIOs were the guys who were hairy young kids, you know, in the basement of those businesses in the early 90s when the internet was being born. I can remember going to talk to CIOs in the late 80s and early 90s. I've been in the telecoms, infrastructure and services business for infinitely more years than I want to admit. But if I talked to a CIO in 1990 about the internet, and I'd say, what's your strategy to embrace the internet as part of your long-term business? He said, you know, I don't really know very much about the internet, but I've heard something about it. And there's a guy down in the basement, you know, he's kind of got hair down to his shoulders and he kind of looks a bit of a mess, but he's always playing around on a computer somewhere and he knows something about it. So come back in a month and I'll talk to you a bit more about it. Well, that hairy young guy is now the CIO, and the guy that didn't know anything about it, if he hadn't figured it out in 2 or 3 years, was out of a job. CIOs today are embracing the Internet of Things. Why? Because it's about data. It's about the collection, management, analysis, and decision processes that live data can bring to make their businesses different. They can make them more efficient. It's kind of the basic ROI model. Or they can make them differentiated. They build net new businesses as a result of it. And for fear of perhaps characterizing this, if there's anybody in the audience from this company, I'll nevertheless go ahead and you can shoot me afterwards. You know, if you look at a combine harvester or a large-scale tractor from John Deere today, it looks pretty much in that cab like a CRJ coming from Delta. I mean, it's packed full of electronics. It's no longer big wheels painted green and a big diesel engine. It's a computerized farm management system that they're selling. It happens to be on wheels. It's a whole change in philosophy of how businesses are actually working, and it's happening more and more. So we have to focus on what's happening in the enterprise space as well. One part of that change is the fact that when ASPs were building unique devices to go in a cab, or whether they were buying them from an ASP vendor themselves, or frankly, whether they were using industrial tools, the lead time to develop a solution was long, the cost of the devices was high, and frankly, they weren't necessarily all that smart. And certainly when we move towards peer-to-peer, you've got to have smarts at the side of the network. Now, let me be clear, and I'll say it on the very last slide. There's a polarizing force in the marketplace today between smarter devices along the edge and, frankly, richer applications, and pretty dumb devices around the edge that have got very, very small amounts of data to be moved around. But the richness of applications is pushing towards smarter devices around the edge. Now, with the advent of smartphones and tablets, we've got a marketplace that's putting in the hands of the enterprise a tool, a piece of technology which is inexpensive, which is very smart, which is becoming increasingly more ruggedized, and can be used both for applications which are unique to that organization or applications that are unique to that particular marketplace. And we see the movement toward in-cab tablets or handheld devices becoming an increasingly important part of this movement. I mean, clearly, you've got an operating system, you've got a low-cost device, and you've got the ability to be able to move information very, very effectively across different marketplaces. And the great news is someone else is putting all the money into developing that operating system, the ecosystem of applications, the capabilities of providing end-to-end security loads, the ability to support device management and other related services around this tablet-centric community. An area which we believe we have to embrace as just the next stage in the evolution of core in the enterprise IoT marketplace. So, about at the time that I'm speaking now, we will be announcing the culmination of a long-term development relationship with Apple. Core is announcing today a carrier-agnostic capability of supporting the Apple iPad family for the enterprise IoT marketplace through our own network and through our own service management ecosystem. Thank you, Carl. This is a very exciting time, quite honestly. We've focused on being able to provide the best-of-breed capabilities on technology connectivity service management. Carl has been nice enough to make sure that we've been represented in the Battle of the Platforms in previous years, and I think we've done a pretty good job in those. But the ability to be able to support this on a unique basis on our own footprint has been important. And actually missing from this slide, because somewhere we didn't give you the latest version of this deck, I would have shown you actually the settings screen on that Apple iPad, because in the top left-hand corner, for those of you that have iPads and things, you'll see that it says the network is core and the carrier is core. The core carrier network is embedded and maintained within the iOS ecosystem. So as things change within those networks, so we continue to support that facility. The key here is carrier independence. Not because we don't like any one of our carrier partners, but our customers have preferences in some cases. There is undoubtedly an inbuilt bias toward or against one or other carriers. And our job is not to be an evangelist for any one carrier. Our job is actually to provide a solution set which meets the reliability, cost efficiency, and other related capabilities of our customers. It's not just connectivity, because we're building mobile resource management, end-to-end security, logistics, fulfillment, service warranty support, and full turnaround of these cellular-enabled iPad devices. And our first customer is taking a plethora of those devices, those services, into a single bundle solution in the health management space, which we think is a very exciting, let me call it, anchor tenant for the premise with this. And I do point out, by the way, here that while we're supporting all of the carriers here, the reason we're supporting all of the carriers is that the US is now moving into the flat earth of the rest of the world. And that is, frankly, competition. You know, for the last 10 years, the carriers have fought it out on duking it out on different technologies, CDMA versus GSM. Well, we're in an all LTE world, in effect, going forward. So let's recognize that, build on it. Benefits of the solution, I don't think I have to tell you about them. I mean, the reality is inexpensive, proven, easy to operate, but we bring the pre-installed capabilities, service support, and other related areas, not just to the enterprise, but frankly to application providers, who increasingly are saying to us, our customers are asking for a tablet-based solution instead of that clunky piece of hardware that I was selling them in the past. So they can now very easily deploy from us, which is quite difficult to do in any other way. So we see from mobile workers to application providers, fleet management companies, and others, the ability to actually leverage these technologies is going to be very important to us. So let's take the last minute or so that we've got to say, what do we do next? With the $9 billion that I've got left. Well, I'm not running for president. And I would, although frankly, I think that there's probably 300 people in the room here that probably, or sorry if it's the right, maybe 3,000 people in the room here, depending on who you listen to, that could be well qualified to do so. We see that the marketplace is polarizing, as I mentioned a little earlier. Richer and richer applications are coming into the marketplace. Why are they coming to market? Because they can. Human nature is all about wanting more, ideally for less, but certainly for the same amount. So if I can build applications that are richer, they have lower latency, they have a greater experience, and at a cost which makes sense, then I can deploy them. And that's what we're doing in the areas of the new networks, the new 4G networks, and heaven forbid, the networks that go in the future. The second area of the what next, and it'll be a subject, inside of this conference, is what's happening in low-power networks. You can't go anywhere without people wanting to talk about low-power networks today. I believe low-power networks are tremendously important for the long-term growth of the Internet of Things, because they bring a whole variety of sensor alternative opportunities to the marketplace. But I also believe that we've got to shake out and get rid of a lot of the proprietary crap that's out there. And the marketplace is going to move rapidly in the direction, I believe, of narrowband IoT, Release 13, which will take us to being able to deploy in secure, regulated spectrum environments for large-scale deployments. Third area is that we haven't really seen the edges of it yet. We're just starting to. The ability to build a device once through using portable eSIM-related technologies and deploy globally. And the final one, and this is perhaps the one which I am most excited about, but I think it's still highly formative, is the role for analytics and ultimately data brokering in our marketplaces. So that's where I would be investing my money. Hopefully not too many of you are going to do the same thing. I'd like to have some sort of unique edge. But the reality is that this is a marketplace that's maturing remarkably quickly. I'm extremely excited to still be in it, and this is what keeps me motivated still over the past 10 or 12 years. With that, I'll wrap up. Carl, if you want to pick up anything from there.